Professor Berhanu Nega is an economist, academic, and a seasoned political leader who has played a prominent role in Ethiopia's public life for over 4 decades. Greeting viewers, today our guest is a distinguished figure whose life story has been deeply intertwined with many of the most defining chapters of modern Ethiopian history. Professor Berhanu Nega is an economist, academic, and a seasoned political leader who has played a prominent role in Ethiopia's public life for over 4 decades. Having completed his advanced studies in economics abroad, he built a distinguished academic career teaching at universities in both the United States and here in Ethiopia. He has also contributed significantly to economic policy discourses, including working with the United Nations Economic Commission (ECA) for Africa. His political journey placed him at the forefront of Ethiopia's democratic struggle following the historic 2005 general elections, and he was also imprisoned and then continued his opposition activities from exile as a leader of the Gunboat 7 opposition movement, as we all know. And now was sentenced to death in absentia by the EPRDF government. Then he returned to Ethiopia in 2018 following major political reforms initiated by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. And now today he serves as the Minister of Education of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia and continues to play a significant role in the country's political and intellectual landscape. Professor Berhanu, welcome to our studio, and we're very honored to have you right here today.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Before I dive into my very critical questions, I'd like to start first about your personal experience. So your life has positioned you at different roles. Academically, you are a political activist, then you're imprisoned, you've also been exiled, and now currently you're working as a minister of the current government. Even at my time, there were times where we used to hear your name as one of the most iconic politicians across the country. And then with the current situation going on, there was a time where you were highly criticized, questioned, and doubted based on your current role as the Minister of Education. So through all these ups and downs and through that magnificent life that you have held, what are your major things that you've learned from your life and the things that you actually think were wrong that you want to share us today?
As you said, you are essentially talking about a very long period through which not only Ethiopia, but not only Africa, but the whole world has gone through a series of transformations in terms of the ideas that are governing what a good society is. What is a good society? At the end of the day, the question is, what is a society that can provide not only satisfaction of basic needs in the economic front, but also belongingness, a sense of participation in the political process through either democratic politics, through the achievement of basic freedoms. And these issues are issues that have shaped a significant portion of the 20th century. Essentially, the idea that animated the Ethiopian youth at that time is Ethiopia is not having an economy that it deserves. It is still very backward, although it has a very long history, starting from 2,000-3,000 years, the Aksumite Empire on. We have not produced an economic system that could generate rapid economic growth, that could modernize our economy so that the majority would live a decent life. So there was this sense of, if you call it anger or dissatisfaction with the way the Ethiopian economy was progressing in terms of providing better livelihood for the majority of the population. This sense that we are not modernizing as fast as we should. Our main explanation for that was the political system. The political system was backward. The political system was what we used to call more feudal. That does not try enough to modernize the economy rather than to keep it in the old system, and therefore that system has to change. From the 1960s coup d'etat followed to the 1974 revolution, that whole generation was animated by this idea that we are not providing our society what it needs and what it deserves. Therefore, the political system has to change to make sure that we can actually achieve rapid economic development, and with it, along with it, equity, so that our economic development would address the needs of the poor and the marginalized. And so those are the issues that animated me, that animated my generation for a long time. Now, there was a problem with it in the sense that we were much more ideological than practical. We were not pragmatic. We were taken over by the ideological struggle at the global level between the, that was a period of the Cold War, so between the socialist bloc and the capitalist bloc. We were predominantly supportive of socialist ideology, but not without having a very careful and pragmatic evaluation of our own economy, rather than just being pushed by the ideological drivers such as equality. Is the Marxist analysis of why societies are not developing as they should is something that we can just bring and implement in Ethiopia and achieve what we were hoping, what at least in my view, legitimate issues that we were raising, but we were not practical enough to see how would it work in our context and how do we develop it in our context. So if I have to pick an issue where we have gotten it wrong, it is that. Not the ideas. The idea of equity, the idea of having a modernized economy, the idea of increasing productivity and changing the basic structure of our economy from backward agricultural economy to modern industrial economy, all that, what we call structural transformation, all that issue is still legitimate. But the way we did it was so ideological, so not grounded on the realities of our own country. And I think at the end we end up making situations worse than better.
On the point that you're raising right now, well, how I understood it was that, so we agree on the challenge that you are actually telling us right now, because I think at some extent we're still facing those challenges. So your drawback is that the method or the mechanism that you used to fight that system did not have a concrete background, or at some point it was wrong.
It is not very much grounded on the realities of Ethiopia, in the sense that whether these things that we are aiming for, that we are aspiring, are achievable in these ideological parameters that we established through the Marxist, radical, socialist perspective. That, I think, is not well thought out. We haven't been grounded on our own reality. We were much more ideological than we should be. We should know now that route is a route that led to all the crises that we have gone through for the last 50 years.
Yes, so as to that, what do you suggest for this generation to change in those mechanisms fighting the challenges that we're currently facing? At some extent, it's the same kind of challenge we're still facing. So.
It is fundamentally the same. That's partly why it is sad, in the sense that even after 50 years, we are trying to deal with essentially similar issues. But I think we are now much more intentional about it, in the sense that we know practically from all these past experiences that we have to be grounded, we have to be practical, we have to be. It does not mean we should not have any ideas. We should still have our idealisms. We should still aspire for a society where poverty is eliminated, if possible. We should still aspire to have an economy that is equitable, in the sense that it helps not just simply to grow the economy, but to have a distribution that makes the life of the lower echelon of society to live a better life. Because at the end of the day, that's the only way that you can have a stable society. You cannot have a huge difference in in income, in any kind of inequality, and hope to have a stable society in the long run. So that concern for equity, equitable growth is still valid. The concern for modernization and structural transformation of our economy is still valid. But I think now we want to actually look at what works within our context, within the context of the way the international economy works, so that we can be very nimble, very much more precise in the kinds of medicines that we are providing for the economic problems that we have.
But let me take you back to your personal life again. And so you have been learning and lecturing economics abroad before you came to your home country, Ethiopia, and finally engage in the politics of Ethiopia. So how has your economical background helped you or influenced you to understand the country's political and economical challenges? And within that frame, out of curiosity, Professor, why economics?
I think when I started freshman year in Addis Ababa University, my interest was to study law. It was our study about socialism and Marxism to a certain degree centered on the economic foundation of a society. The argument has always been, unless as always you change the economic base, you cannot change the political and other structures. Therefore, to understand how the economy works became a very important part of my yearning, if you will, in education. So I became a freshman. Before the first semester ends, there was a lot of disturbance, and we have to leave. At that time, we were actually living underground because the government was looking for a lot of young people at that time who were considered the more radical socialists of the time. So I have to leave the country. I have to join the armed struggle of the EPRP at that time, and through that I went abroad to the United States. So when I went to the United States, the first curiosity was to understand what was it that I was going to give my life for, because I've gone to this armed struggle. I was imprisoned by the party that I joined to improve Ethiopian society by the EPRP itself, while we were in guerrilla struggle. So when I left, my whole curiosity was about understanding why was I going to give my life for? What is it that I need to understand about this thing? I joined when I was very young. I still believe that the basic sentiment was right, but I also saw the problems with what you might call left organizations at that time through this experience in the party during the struggle, that it is a system that does not tolerate any criticism. So a little criticism led to our imprisonment. About 15 of our comrades were killed because of that, and I was just young, therefore that's why really that I survived. So when I left, the first thing that I wanted to do was to study the economics of socialism, the internal party struggles in the communist parties that we were following at that time, like the Chinese Communist Party and the Russian Communist Party and the rest of them, and say how they treated dissidents within the parties. And that, I think, became what I became in terms of shaping how I look at the world, how I look at equity, equality, how I look at party structures and what kind of party structures provide for a more democratic dispensation. So I think most likely I became a social democrat starting from then, because social democracy, at least in my understanding of it, was a social organization that at once wants to keep the basic liberal democratic political order, but at the same time create an economy that is fair and equitable to the majority. That, I think, has animated the way I think about the world, the way I think about even Ethiopian society since then.
Related to this question, I mean, I think I've heard you speaking about your own kind of philosophy in the area of economist. How can we make economist an Ethiopian?
That's part of the debate that is taking place in Ethiopia, I think. I mean, for example, we want rapid economic growth. So what would give us rapid economic growth? But when we want rapid economic growth, what do we do with the poor? Is it going to be in the same old ways of just simply let the economy grow and let it trickle down to the poor, or do we actually implement a pro-poor growth? There is no question that we need growth, but should it be more pro-poor in the sense of bringing the lower classes up, or just simply drive, assume that the private sector would drive it forward without worrying about distribution? I think there is a big debate. I mean, I would say in the current Ethiopian debate, most believe this idea that yes, we have to catch up. Yes, Ethiopia has to grow much faster than it was growing. We have to be very intentional about what it is that we have to do in terms of agriculture, industry, mining, what have you. Every aspect of the economy, we have to concentrate and use the country's resources for achieving structural transformation. But in the meantime, we also have to think along with it, how could we do it without making poverty worse? How could we do it by ensuring that the poor can have a decent life? We need to do this if at the end of the day what we want to achieve is a stable society that can move from our economic problems of poverty, of inequality, low levels of productivity, and things like that, to a higher level of economic development that provides significant increase in productivity, but at the same time that also the poor shares from these productivity gains by making sure that the income of the poor and the lower class. I would say the majority of Ethiopians are now very clear about the core things that we have to do. We have to achieve rapid economic development. For that, we need to increase our savings. There is no question about it. And we have to transform the economy from this predominantly agrarian economy to more industrial economy, which essentially means we have to increase productivity both in agriculture and in manufacturing, in mining, in everything at a level that would ensure a reasonably decent living to the people who are gaining employment from these new industries and things of that sort. So there is that sense of this anger, this yearning that we as a civilization deserve better than this. We need to develop our economies commensurate to what our forefathers have provided at the thousands and thousands of years ago. The anger that comes from looking yourself at the mirror and say, how are we so poor when we have that civilization before other part? There is that yearning. I think it's a very important fuel to drive us forward. This is a civilizational society. It has memory. We are not starting from zero. We have a history that shows that we can do this because we have done it much before many others have done it. But somewhere we have lost our way in the middle of it. Now we have to get back to that. Now we have to consider ourselves a society with memory of civilization, a society that deserves and can achieve rapid economic development.
Let me interrupt you on that topic. And wondering back, it's as you've stated, there's still an anger, there's still an unanswered question that has been coming for decades from every generation that we can agree on. But you've already said it, that there has been some place where our civilization is gutted. So that being the situation, and you being the Minister of Education currently, Do you think Africans as Africa should go back and search civilizations, back to their fathers' and grandfathers' civilization, and dig out what has been buried? Or are we supposed to cop up with the world that is now currently? Are we supposed to be running to the front, or do we need to stand a little bit, calm down?
I don't think human civilization can go back. Neither can we as Africans. It is important that we have a memory so that we are not oppressed by the weight of history, what has happened to us, what has happened to the erosion of our civilizations and things of that sort, and concentrate on how we bring back the old civilization. We are part of human civilization. Knowledge has expanded. Whether fairly or not, that's another thing. But science has significantly expanded. Technology has significantly expanded. So we are not going to reinvent the wheel from where we were. What we need is a psychological aspect that we are not some inherently weak or inherently backward people. We have a history where we have been moving along other civilizations in the past. Somewhere that has been curtailed. It is to a certain degree our doing, but it's also the change in the international environment. Since the dominance of Western civilization, that gap between societies has expanded significantly. And now the issue is, how do we narrow this gap? The knowledge is available. We don't have to start from zero. We start from the knowledge that is available to all human beings and build it with some intentionality about moving forward. Not to just simply copy forever, but expand our knowledge base in such a way that we are also going to be part of the creators of new technologies and new knowledge and things of that. That's what takes us to the value of education, which I'm sure we are going to come to. But
yes, definitely.
To answer, and it's a very important question that you asked in terms of, when you look at some of the debates, this anger about the last 400, 500 years of African history and our history, the anger that we feel that we are moving but going nowhere, moving in the same steps. Understanding of why that is. It's our political system, it's our economic system. Some part of our cultural tradition also might have contributed to all this. Some also psychological damage that is done to us through this more contemporary civilizations, the racism, the ideas that we as Africans are not capable, are not up to what is required. We have gone through that, and part of this anger have led some to say, no, we have to go back to our tradition and things of that sort. My argument is a bit different. It's not to go back to that tradition. It is to actually have that memory and the power that gives you in terms of your ability. You can do this. There is nothing inherently wrong with you. There is nothing inherently wrong with our societies other than the way we organize our societies, the way we move forward, the way we understand knowledge. All that is now coming together in the sense that we have to not resist any change or human knowledge in general, but to adopt human knowledge wherever they come from and use it to improve our societies, to improve the future of our children, and to have a place, a really meaningful, equal place with the rest of humanity. At the end of the day, in my view, the question is not just about us, not just about Africans. The crisis that we are observing now in the world also forces us to think ourselves much more deeply as human beings, because it's human civilization that is now being questioned in some quarters. So I think we have to be more pragmatic, more practical, more intentional in terms of how we move forward rather than react.
So if you say going back is not going to be an option, that we can definitely agree on, especially on the points that you have raised. But do you think we do have the ability, we have the time, and we have the potential to cop up with the rest of the world? The reason why I'm actually picking this line up is because the system in which the world was actually built up has already given Africa a place. And that does not, the system is not allowing us to cop up with them. We can't be on the same level as they are in, because that's how they have built the system. It might be through colonization, it might be through the political crisis that we're going, the governments, and even in human history. For me personally, and I think a lot of majority of Yodis, especially this century Yodis, would agree with me that human history actually goes backwards. What is the new thing that we have invented, actually, that changed the perception of the world? Elaborate on that, please.
That's a very interesting question, in the sense that, I mean, if you look at history, long history, I mean, the most of the civilizational struggle was between the East and the West, right? I mean, go back to thousands of years. The contribution that, say, for example, the Persian Empire, before the emergence of the Western Empire, or the Chinese Empire at that time, was much more developed than, for example, the West. I mean, the West, essentially, the dominance of the West started, depending upon who you ask, around 460 AD. Yeah, before that, it was, one civilization comes and another one was, but it was also, all civilizations borrow from the civilizations before them. That's why, I mean, historians that were studying that period would argue that Western civilization is not just Western. Western civilization has borrowed so much from the Middle Eastern civilization, the Arabs and the Persians and the Chinese in the East. That's how human society evolves. There is no one civilization that's pure, in the sense that has not borrowed from the civilization of other humans. We have to understand that. And we also have to understand that civilizations change. There were periods when, for example, the Eastern civilization has dominated. And then the Western, I mean, there was this tug of war in hundreds and sometimes in 1,000 years change that take place that show that some civilization that was, down for a while, then picks up, and a new civilization comes up, and that old civilization come back. And this is exactly what we see actually in the 21st century too. If you look at Asia, for example, 1960, the per capita income of South Korea was the same as Ghana or Ethiopia, right? China, essentially the same. Where are they now? I mean, we are talking about 60 or 70 years, right? Now, I mean, we are talking about China as another center of another new center empire. And China didn't do this by totally going back towards the old way of doing things. It is by adapting the change that has taken place through even the dominance of Western civilization, and adapt it and move forward. But in this process, what has helped, if you ask me, is this memory of the civilization. The Chinese intellectuals have this thing that they say, the century of humiliation. After the Opium War is when China went downhill because of the pressures coming from the West. When you ask them, how did China achieve this incredible growth in such a short time, they would say, our memory, the century of humiliation. That's what I want Africans to feel. That's what I want Ethiopians to feel. That the fact that we have a memory of an older civilization does not mean to go back to it. It is to have that memory and use it so that, it gives you the psychological boost that you can do this. There is nothing inherently wrong with you. You can't think like any other human being anywhere else. It's just a matter of how we organize our society in such a way that we can be able to achieve the levels that human society has achieved, whether it's in education, in technology, in all of that. That is doable. That's doable because we have seen it in our own lifetime. I remember when China was just another third world country. I remember South Korea when it was, or most of Asia. We Africans can't do that too. There is nothing inherently wrong with us. We just have to organize our states. We just have to organize our economies in such a way that that will not provide the objectives that we want to achieve. And one more important thing. You look at the experience of China and Asia in recent years, and many people say, "Oh, they were, copying from the West," and there is nothing wrong with copying. But what is important is the concept of development that the Chinese are forwarding is not the same as the concept of development that the West is developing. Yes, technological change and things, but in terms of how they keep their own culture, how they give value to distribution than just simply economic growth. What kind of state do we need? The role of the state in economic development. All these are now emerging as experiences that we can learn from. So we should not jump into picking one or the other of these past civilizations. We should say, what is it that worked for us? What is it that we need to do in order to achieve what other countries have achieved?
I guess it's like giving space for both and filtering from each side.
Exactly.
And taking 50-50 and eliminating absolutely following something as a trend and as a herd.
Absolutely.
We'll definitely come back on this point again too. So let me take you back through time. Your political dominance or engagement started back at the Ethiopian student movement during the time where universities were the center of political discussions. Civil awareness was very high. Majority of you were highly enlightened, and so on. So you're one of the living testimonies of that time. So we would like you to tell us what it looked like to be a student at that time, one. And the second part, we basically don't have a generalized, concrete idea of the political assumptions of that time. One might come and tell us that that was a wasteful time and an unnecessary sacrifice, and they have done nothing for the politics across the country. And the other might come and tell us that that was a very critical point in the history of Ethiopian politics. So you, as a living testimony, Professor, would you give us this general assumption of your thought of the political era at that time?
We must understand that modern Ethiopian politics started then. So that's the period. That is the period where Ethiopian politics moved from this traditional, dominated by the monarchy and the big feudal lords and things like that, to a new class of people who come and say, no, this is not the way we want to move forward. In that sense, from the basic essence of creating, for example, a political party, for us, the experience comes from that time. And that time's experience of party politics comes from the left tradition, this vanguard party tradition. So in the way that we picked, that's why I sometimes try to make a distinction between the modernization imperative of wanting the country to move forward to the more ideological imperative of taking whole stock and barrel the Marxist ideology and say we can implement this and be productive. So what I tell the new generation is the problem with that generation is the degree to which it is ideological. Its intentions were good. Its intentions were to develop the country. Its intentions were to develop a reasonably more equitable society, but also a modern society. That intention is good, and that's our aspiration now too. We went wrong when the ideology dominates not only our thinking, but our practice of politics. We became extremely parochial in our views. At that time, if it's not enough that you have a socialist idea or an idea that says, okay, there must be development but equity at the same time. But you have to be a specific brand. You have to be a Maoist or a Stalinist or a Trotskyite. These differences within the left tradition was simply absorbed as truisms without really seriously questioning the degree to which those issues are that important for us in the Ethiopian context. That kind of dogmatism, that kind of just simply taking ideas and thinking of them as if it is a religion rather than as a living proposition how to improve society. That is our mistake and our fault and our contribution to the negative outcomes. But there were also good things. The youth at that time gives its life without question if they believe it improves the life of the society in general. It is committed, it's not selfish, it is open, it is very nationalist in the sense that it loves its country, it wants to see that country developing, it wants to contribute to that, rather than to scramble for more resources. So that is also another. And also, the search for knowledge was much better then than now, in the sense that reading was considered an important thing to do. Debates, discussions, and study groups and things of that sort, to learn more, to know not only our country but also even more our world. That yearning for knowledge, I think, is an important aspect of that time, that the youth now can actually, to a certain degree, not totally, but to a certain degree, emulate. History should be taken in the context of the period itself. It's very difficult to evaluate that period from how we think about it today. We have to take it at that time. What were they thinking? It is just in the same way as, for example, we were condemning the emperors and the old monarchy without actually seeing what were they trying to achieve. Is there something good from it? The idea of, for example, having an access to the sea, something that has engaged Ethiopian emperors in the past. That was not a bad thing. That was, but even a sense of modernization. This idea that we are backward, that we need to modernize, was also, that seed was also in some of the monarchs. The thing is, they were not in a position to push it further so that we can have a developed thing. So what I am saying is, let's take history for what it is. Something that we can learn from, something that we can learn to avoid the mistakes of the past, but also to take the good things of that period and use it to drive us.
Other than taking history as it is, Professor, I mean, I'd like you to touch that point, is like, they tried their best. They didn't sit quiet. We can take you as an example. You come from a very privileged family. Most of the challenges that you were raising were not directly affecting you. And then you were willing to sacrifice your life and more for the challenge that the society or people, other places were actually facing. So that should be a very encouragement to that time. My question here is that for those people who are trying to criticize the moment, we're not saying, I don't want to hear whether the system were right or not, whether your political ideas were right or not. That's their view. I want you to highlight is that it's not whether or not they have hit their target. It's not whether or not they were right ideologically. It was not about their political ideologies, but from their background that they have come and the paths that they have gone and the new path they have created to us as a revolutionaries.
You have to understand, I mean, close to 500 years of capitalism as a system that has dominated our world for over 500 years. The ideology of capitalism always says that we are selfish by definition, and to be selfish is good. And the good life is measured in terms of the accumulation of material things. This ideology has penetrated almost every society on this planet. Our generation's thinking, this idea of socialism and things of that sort, essentially provides an alternative way of thinking about this, which essentially says, no, successful life is not only material success is important, but not your success at the expense of everything. We need material success, which is important, but we also need social respect. In a way, without in any way thinking about what is it that we also owe to society in order to make society better for us also. Because all socialist idea essentially says the individual success is very much dependent upon the society's success in general. So unless otherwise the whole society improves, just individually achieving some economic benefit is not that significant. That ideology was defeated, more or less, after the Cold War, and capitalism has a free reign, at least for the last 30, 40 years, and a very specific brand of capitalism, the American brand of capitalism. So this generation that you are talking about, this your generation, is a generation that grew in that period. All you think about, or what you consider to be the good life, is this material life. It is. And that is now being challenged, because we are seeing that is not really, at the end of the day, what provides happiness to a larger human society. In economics, mainstream neoclassical economics, the model itself works with the assumption that people are never satiated. You always want more. There is no point where you say materially you have enough, right? If you assume, if you change that assumption, this is an assumption, if you change that assumption to say that, there is a point where material consumption does not make any sense. There is a point where that is no more significant, then the whole model that tries to explain the way capitalist society works collapses. Now, more recently, in the last 30, 40 years, we have found out that we have only one planet. We know that for a long time, where biological beings have survived. And climate scientists have been saying that our consumption habit as human beings cannot be sustainable if we want to achieve consumption level of, say, for example, the United States, for all human beings. We need 4 planets, meaning the assumption that you can consume till kingdom comes at a higher and higher level forever is not something that our planet can tolerate. Meaning there is a limit. There is a ceiling where what our consumption has to be under in terms of our carbon consumption and what have you. Meaning the lifestyle that we thought was a lifestyle that would give us a good life as humanity is now seriously questioned. That cannot be sustainable. Then what do? Then you have to change the way you think about what is a good life. Is it, again, more and more consumption, or should we change our package of things that we need, whereby we can also have this planet survive for our great grandchildren? That means we have to start to think carefully, rather than just simply buying whatever we have been consuming. We have to start to think about what technology does. What kind of society does it give us? Does it improve human society? At the end of the day, the measure must be, does human society benefit from these things that we do? If it leads us to, for example, if technology is leading us to literally destroying the basic trust between human beings, because the post-truth world, anybody can write anything they want, and you don't know what to trust and what not to trust, then that raises a very serious question about what does it mean to live in a society where trust is gone. There must be some assumption in our conversation that I trust you are asking me the right question or what you think needs answer. If I don't trust any of it, then the conversation stops. So we are slowly, the technology that was created to make us more democratic, to open up the space for broader ideas, which is good, but is also have the negative impact of making it very difficult to differentiate between truth and falsehood. When you have that, you also then have the erosion of trust between human beings. Without trust, I don't know how human society is possible. So we have to think not in this, what we buy as an ideological package. So capitalism is good. Why? Because it gives you more material life and easy life, and so we are all going to be capitalists. But yes, there is no question that capitalism has been a very productive society. But is it something that we can think for the next millennium? Can we survive with that kind of concept? That kind of thinking is what we need. I think the younger generation has to think, because it has to learn from our mistakes of the past. Then it has to redefine what the future ought to be. What is it that we want in the future for us, for our children? And then what kind of social organization would give us that society that we all hear? That conversation I don't see, but I really hope that conversation would start to emerge eventually.
The reason why you're not seeing this kind of conversation among the current youth, which is us, can it be because through our educational systems we're actually being taken off from our critical thinking, and we're only learning to obediently accept every indoctrination that we've been given?
This is not just in our society. I mean, Western societies
everywhere
as
across
well.
Africa.
That the ability of the children to reason, to think critically and things of that sort is slowly decreasing. I mean, what makes us human is our ability to think, to reason. To think not only individually, but to think collectively as a group and to reason. Yeah. Any conversation without the basis, without a reasonable basis, is just not a conversation. So there is a lot of debate now, the degree to which human ability to reason and to trust is deteriorating because of these new technologies that came supposedly to help us live a better life. The danger is now observable in our societies. We catch up with this after it is too late, 20, 30 years from now. Because we just simply absorb whatever it is that we are getting from abroad. And my hope is your generation, the younger generation, and that's part of the reason why we are struggling to improve the quality of education and things of that sort, that we would enhance their ability to reason, to think critically, not to just simply buy whatever is out there, but to be able to filter what is right, what is wrong, what is good for human beings or not. And I'm hoping that our reforms that we're doing on the education sector would lead towards a generation of people who are much more honest, much more truthful, much more reasonable, etc. That's what I'm hoping.
Unless otherwise you stop treating the symptoms and cure the disease, I think it's going to take us more, and it's going to make us pay a lot more than it is actually currently we're going through.
Absolutely. Now, this is becoming extremely critical. The world is changing. This is sometimes what you call civilizational change that is taking place. Whatever we thought were simply the only way forward, the only way that you can imagine progress, is now being questioned. We, as Ethiopians, have to start seriously thinking without simply buying whole stock and barrel whatever ideas we are getting from abroad. We have to start, our intellectuals have to, be bold enough to think differently, but reasonably, to come up with new ideas for countries such as ours. Africans, this is time to have a meaningful debate within the African communities to say, okay, where did we go wrong in the past? Where is the future heading? What is it that we have to do in order to be an important actor in this saga of human civilization that's going forward. We need to start very seriously to think independently and to act independently, so that we have some participation in shaping our own future, rather than just simply accepting what others have carted for us.
But then, Professor, I think it's time that we give chance to probably try and error method, anything that might work, but any assumptions.
At least in the Ethiopian case, I can say with some confidence that at the level of government there is this thinking, there is this ongoing discussion and thinking about where is this thing going, what is our role, what is it that we need to do, and at what speed should we go in order to achieve this. There is some sense of this gathering storm at the international level that is coming to address it. What is missing in our country, and I suspect is in most African countries, is the intellectuals. We are missing the intellectuals, partly because of the way our political system has been operating. I mean, to have independent thought was scary, right? It creates problems from governments. Even our education was so dominated by the interference of political power in one form or another. And one of the reasons why we are trying to separate education from political interference is precisely to allow independent thinkers to emerge in our universities to be a safe place for independent thinking without being influenced by government or tradition or whatever. For this search for truth and for knowledge to be the main driver of our intellectual class, and then for them to be bold enough to bring those ideas, new ideas and these new debates into our social conversation, whether it is in the political arena or as public intellectuals. This is where I feel like we are missing. We are missing the role of academics, the role of intellectuals to play a significant role in making our future reasonable, to open our eyes to what is coming and then to prepare for it as a society.
But then, Professor, sorry to interfere you, if your plan is to include the intellectuals with the government bodies and finish everything up there, so how are your functioning going to be very practical in terms of bringing what you've already cooked up there down to the level of the majority of youngsters, which is across the country? I mean, don't you think there needs to be some kind of transparency and working hand with hand? We might not be at the level as the intellectuals and the government bodies, but we also have a basic share in the country, since Africa is a youngster continent, right? So you have to bring those policies and those discussions transparent enough in a way that we can also understand and work and cop up with your policy reforms. Otherwise, it's going to be those political reforms that has happened up there and would always have a problem when it comes to implementation. Don't you think we have to work together?
So the question is, how do ideas filter to the larger society?
Yes.
Right? Who are the main idea generators, whose ideas then slowly filter through the various mechanisms to society?
Oops, yes.
Now, in the past, including in the West and in other places, the intellectual class was the one that was coming up with these new ideas, whether it is in scientific discovery, in technology, or whatever. It is the universities were the center of learning, the center of new ideas emerging, which then goes into the larger society and became part of the broader society's understanding of what life is. What we are facing now is, in the African context, a little bit more simply because the intellectual class was so subdued by political pressure that independent thinking, and not only independent, but thinking that's bold enough that you can present to society, despite the fact that politicians might not like it, or traditional institutions don't like it, but to show that this is the truth. This is the truth as I understand it. This is what is based on reason. So in that sense, we have a shortage. We have to we still need our intellectuals to emerge, to be bold enough, to be honest enough, to be not fearful, to come up with ideas so that society can have a discussion and a debate to see what it can appropriate. But we are caught in this moment when, without achieving that, without bringing the intellectual class to be the leaders of ideas and things of that sort, technology has changed. So anybody can sit in a computer and come up with ideas, and nobody can even, check whether that is a true statement or not. So this idea proliferation all over has gone out of the control of any of these, traditional idea leaders, like intellectuals and things of that sort. So we are caught in that bind. Our intellectual class has not developed the spine and the independence and the boldness to confront society with these new ideas. But there is now a mechanism to package ideas in a much more palatable form, irrespective of whether that idea is good, bad, or true or false. So we have an uphill battle to get the idea of the young people and things of that sort to this challenge that we are facing. They are still more influenced by social media and things of that sort. We are doubly in danger. The typical class of people that would provide ideas to society to move forward, before we give them the power, the energy, and the freedom to think that, because of our political and other maladies of the past, then there is a new technology that came that is also created a contestation in terms of the realm of ideas, not based on truth, not based on reason, just simply because they are loud. They are packaging it in such a way that it is much more entertainment than anything else. So entertainment and knowledge have gotten mixed up, and that's what I worry about. The new generation. It is captured to a certain degree by this new technology, and not just the technology itself, but the ideas that are coming through this technology becoming more powerful than traditionally useful mechanisms such as reason and rational thinking.
We've tried to see the Ethiopian student movements and how revolutionist and idealistic the time of your generations were. Now, when you compare that to the current generation, do you think this generation is politically aware and knows its civic rights and duties? And if not, where did we miss that point? Where did the bridge break?
I think the damage done to our politics for the last 50 years, where politics is dominated by whichever group comes to power, by this powerful, by some kind of violence rather than by the betterment of their ideas. Power or governance was a product of whoever has power. That has significantly degraded the importance of knowledge, truths, ideas, and discussions. And to be in power, all you need is force. All you need is all kinds of machinations that would keep you in power. So because of that, the whole generation since the 1960s, I think mostly grew up either as an opportunist that can somehow find a way to attach itself to the state and benefit from that, or completely scared of the political process and completely exited from that process, including our intellectuals. They just completely exited from that political conversation. Now there is this serious rethinking about what our politics should be. And my hope is, although the ideas now are coming from the state than from the intellectual class as such, the freedom that this would allow intellectuals to have space to think independently would now hopefully bring a new kind of discourse in our politics. And I think that would change the coming generation in terms of how it should think about the country, how it should think about development, how it should think about education and what have you.
Professor, in addition to that, I mean, the generation that we're talking were actually even raised in an era where we're told politics is dirty, is a dirty game. So make sure not to make your hands dirty by interfering in that. And now, as a person that has spent more than half of your years in politics, what is your say in that? Don't you think we need more yodhas and everybody should be aware of the political status of their country and continent?
Leaving politics as a vocation of some elites out there is a very, very dangerous proposition. I think the decision-making process, if the public does not have some influence and control over this decision-making process, some power over people in government, to leave it as if that this is just the task and the role of certain people out there is a very, very dangerous proposition. And nobody should tell us that more than our own recent history. What did we achieve in that process? Most of the people just simply left their country, right? They became refugees. Our education system has turned, for the elite, a preparation for exile. Just to move abroad rather than not having confidence in your own country and sit and work here and achieve success. I mean, you look at our schools where the elites go to. It is preparing us to somehow leave the country and live abroad. Our mentality, our psychology has changed. Our confidence in our country has significantly degraded. That's what we have to bring back. We have to make politics safer. It should be a place where people who care about their country, people who think about the betterment of the larger society, that should be a safe place for them to come and be part of the political process. I don't think we can afford the next generation to be the same as this generation, in the sense that it is completely afraid of the political process, leaves it to whoever does it, and simply hope to achieve something better by themselves. My advice is the success that you get individually in the absence of a larger societal support, not only support, but also belongingness, is very fleeting. You need your own society, a society that you share some of the cultures, even if you disagree in some of them, to have a sense of belongingness to that society. That's an important part of what life is, what a better life is. And we have been missing that because for a long time, for 50, 60 years, we have been in this yo-yo syndrome of sorts where we go up and down in terms of where our societal trajectory is going to be.
We've tried our best to see the past era of your life, and now let's bring it to the current situation where you're sitting as the Education Minister of the Ethiopian government. Related to that, before I dive into your decisions and what your institutions have been doing and the reforms that you've been taking since you've taken office, which has now almost been 4 years, if I'm not wrong.
4.5.
4.5. You've been criticizing the government. You've been questioning the decisions that have been made by governments the entire time, starting from your very youth, if I'm not wrong, right? So how does it feel now to sit at the place where you're now being criticized and now you're being questioned and now you're being part of the government? Share us a little about that.
No, I mean, it is, as you said, it's a different seat. It's a different experience completely. The reason why what I am doing now in government was not possible in the past was because the governments were not, at least in some basic fundamental principles of what I said, the need for progress, the need for some kind of equity and things of that sort, and the need for a governance that prioritize the interest of the whole society than the interest of a small group in party, in power, and things of that sort, which makes it very difficult to positively contribute through the state apparatus. So you end up being an opposition, a critic of the state, and things of that sort. Now, this experience that I have now of participating in government has two benefits, in my view, from my perspective. First is it actually gives you a more practical feel about how government decisions are made. What are the kinds of elements that you consider before you make any government decision, whether it is in policy or in law and things of that sort. The play of different interests within society that has to be reflected in the law that you promulgate or the policies that you implement. Government is where politics is. Government is where decisions that are applicable to all of us take place. Any government law applies to all of us. That's only laws that apply to all societies made by government. So, as such, you also have to be very careful because society is also divided in terms of its interests, not just in terms of ethnicity and things of that sort, which is should not be a major consideration in my view, but interests. The interest of the rich is different from the interest of the poor. The interest of the business class is different from the interest. All these interests are there. The interest of farmers is different from the interest of the industrialists. So when you make a law, you have to weigh these different interests, and at the end decide which rendering of this particular law provides benefit to all. That's what being in it helps you understand in practical terms. Although you know some of it theoretically, but in practical terms, the various negotiations taking place to make sure that these different interests are somehow accommodated to make. So that's a very important lesson. It's just a life lesson that I think you become a little bit better off, and your criticism, even when you criticize government, would be a little bit more informed, not just theoretically but in practice. That's one. The second is we tend to underestimate the state. The state is a very, very important and powerful instrument as a social organization. By being in the state, you can do a lot if you are clean, if you are not interested in just promoting your own narrow interest or your narrow group's interest, but you look at the state as an institution that is supposed to serve everybody. There are resources in government that you can use very effectively to do some real good in society. Much more than being a critic from outside. When you are in it, there are resources that you can use to actually achieve what you think is the right thing to achieve. So these two things I have learned in this new rendering of my position, late life.
Now let's relate the current status in which the world is. We're facing a lot of conflicts. In a time of such crisis, in time where we are not even sure if Africa has the potential to cope up with the vast amount of changes that we're seeing across the globe, how are your educational reforms or the institutions that you're currently chairing, how is that the Ethiopian's educational system trying to make changes and reforms, ground-based reforms that acquire the changes that we've seen around the world? What is the end goal of the educational system in Ethiopia? What kind of citizens are we trying to take out? And in terms of change, yes, we've seen a lot of changes during the 4-year plan. We've seen the way the mechanisms we're taking exams, the content, a lot has been changed. But when we come to the practical changes and the visible changes that we need, what are the changes that you're bringing in order to make a good citizen, in order to make a citizen that is capable to cope up with these vast shifts across the globe and continent?
That's a very important question that requires very detailed discussion, but let me try at least my understanding of what this moment is, this moment in human life. This is a millennial change that is taking place in our world. I mean, things that no one can observe. I sometimes feel like I'm watching history just right in front of my eyes. Some analysts talk about this period as unique in human history because a number of crises have come together at the same time, making it very difficult or very challenging as to how to address it. So one is what they call the ideological crisis. You know, in the past, if you ask anybody how to organize society, they are informed by either of these three ideologies that have dominated our world for the last 200, 300 years. Liberalism, communism, fascism. Now, all these three ideologies are in disarray. Communism has, at least in its past rendering, has collapsed in the 1990s. Fascism, the damage that it has done in the Second World War has made it less appealing to human society. Liberalism was the only one that is standing, but liberalism is now very, very seriously eroded. So we don't have ideas that shape the way we think about how society should be organized. One. Two, we have a climate crisis, as I said earlier. We have reached a point where human beings are now conscious that they cannot live, consume, produce in the same way that they were doing in the past. Because the more we do it, the more we damage the planet and make it unlivable for human society. You have a serious thinking to do about how to change our consumption and production habits so that it is commensurate with the sustainability of life in our planet. That's the second crisis. It's a very serious crisis. Third, the global order that have dominated our world for the last 70, 80 years since the Second World War is now collapsing. The institutions that were developed to provide a peaceful life for humanity across the board, the United Nations, the Bretton Woods institutions, all those that were organizing our economy and our security apparatus and things of that sort, is now, it changed into a unipolarity. I mean, it has been dominated by the United States. It changed into a unipolarity after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But now, we are now in what some say is the beginning of multipolarity. Different centers of power that raise all kinds of questions about what kind of security architecture is. Is it going to go through conflicts, dangerous conflicts, at a time of nuclear weapons and things of that sort? And for many countries like ours, it requires some navigating. How do we survive? How is it that we are not going to be a victim of this? Fourth, you have the crisis caused by technology. Technology has historically been something that improves society, also creates conflicts and new ways of doing things and new ways of thinking. The emergence of artificial intelligence and what it would do to human society, the changes in biomedical engineering, and that has raised a question to the extent that can human beings continue the way they are? Or is this going to... So all these are coming now together. This is a period where all these have come together. Some call it a meta-crisis. So how we survive this is going to be extremely important. We can't just, we can't borrow simply from the past because these are new things that are happening. So we have to navigate through this by knowing as much as possible by knowledge and reason and understanding of what the crisis is, so that you can survive it. You can. So during this period, as Africans, we have to think, okay, in the past, fundamental change in civilization, how did we fare? Right? We became colonized, we were enslaved, we were the butt of this new emerged, at that time, the power that emerged. Are we going to sit and wait for it to come, this new wave? How do we navigate through this so that we can survive? I mean, it literally has become a survival question for Africans, for Ethiopians. So our thinking has to take all this into account and say, okay, how do we prepare for this eventuality? So that, for me, in addition to all these things that we have to do in terms of the economy, with a sense of urgency, the most important thing that we can do is to prepare the next generation well, to prepare them to be well educated so that they can reason and understand this change and come up with ideas, not just copying it from other places, from their own experiences that would help them survive this. We have to generate new generation of leaders. We have to develop new generation of leaders that can think, not only in politics, but in science, in technology, in philosophy, in whatever it is, that would prepare our society to be able to withstand this coming tsunami of change in our world. Education is that important. It is the very survival of our future, the future generation. How we teach them, how we prepare them, not just simply in terms of knowing science and maths and biology, but in terms of how to live with other human beings, their moral basis, understanding their country. This is so important that for me it is more than any other thing that we can take as a priority. That does not mean we don't have to do these other things. Still, the thing is moving very fast, so we have to prepare. For example, tomorrow the Red Sea is closed. What are we going to do? Do we have enough food to produce? So whatever it is that we are doing in agriculture to make sure our productivity has increased and that we are producing enough to feed our own population for a decade or so, whatever it is. Or energy independence, What are we going to do if, we can't import oil or things like that? Where do we get our fertilizers to produce our... These issues related to economic independence, economic freedom to a certain degree, from your own struggles and your own knowledge, is more important now than ever. Yes, so we have to do that. But even more, because this history takes some time, we have to think about the next 50 years. This is the generation that we're teaching now that's going to take over this country in 30, 40 years. How are we preparing them? Like us, like in the past, where, where the very integrity of the education system was destroyed, where cheating and stealing was considered normal in our education, where the quality of education has deteriorated so much that it cannot produce a generation that could support the economy. We know we have to be intentional. We cannot afford that. So we have to produce this new generation of people, self-confident, knowledgeable about their own societies, but also very knowledgeable about human knowledge in general, in science, in technology, in everything. That would have the wherewithal to protect this country, to make this country survive. That is the responsibility of our education system. This is not something that we take very lightly, not if we know what these dangers are that are coming. So that's why, at least in our education reform, we have to do a lot of things, but conscious of what we are doing. This is what is coming. We have to prepare our children And not by providing education to elites alone, by providing education to every kid as much as possible. We don't know where the next scientist comes, right? Yeah. That's why we are investing in foundational learning in kindergartens all over the country. That's why we are improving the infrastructure. That's why we are improving the quality, the curriculum. So it should be seen from that perspective. The education sector's reform is important in producing the next generation of Ethiopians who are conscious of the potential danger for the survival of their own country or even the continent. That is what this education system has to produce.
Oh, Professor, that was well said. If we had more time, it would have been lovely because we have plenty of more questions and topics that we have not raised enough. I am wrapping up my questions. Again, it's an honor to have you here at the studio. Thank you for coming in. But that comes with a catch. You have to promise our viewers for another part 2. You have to come back to our studio.
Listen, I'm very happy to hear that Ethiopian media is now moving towards showing its presence across the continent. This program that you have started is something that I strongly appreciate, and I definitely will be a very good customer in the future.
Thank you so much. That's all we needed for now. So viewers, this was our exclusive interview with the Educational Minister of Ethiopia and economist Professor Berhanu. I hope you've gained much from it. And thank you for tuning in, and see you again next week.